Now, I want to tell you about these things that I have. They're all drinking vessels, right? So at Best Week Ever, we went through the education building and we found shirts, socks, pants, cups everywhere. Now, I don't know why people left pants. Can't figure that one out. I don't think we sent anybody home shirtless, but somehow people had shirts missing. So we know that, but then we also had these. These have been sitting in my office, and if you look at them, they look mostly clean, right? They're mostly clean. Now, what if I told you that this morning beforehand, I decided, hey, I'm just going to rinse them out real fast. They've been sitting in my office beside the window. I'm just going to rinse them out, throw some water in there. You know, if we've got some expired detergent, I'll drop some in there. We have a lot of expired things, you know, around here. Who would want to drink out of it? Right? Like, I looked at these, and I was like, okay, this is obviously a kid one. I don't know what they got. So here, Coop, I'm going to give them back to you. All right. This was a drinker, all right? So this person's got a problem. And, you know, so, I mean, that's there. Here, John, I'm going to give this to you. All right. So I thought, you know what, this one was most likely the adult cup, right? We thought this was the adult cup. This is the one you would probably choose. And it's mostly clean, right? I mean, it's pretty good. And then I looked into it. So if I would have come to you and I would have said, Corlin, you're going to go for this? No. Yes. Cameron? All right. Hey, 3 for 3 catchable passes there, all right? That was pretty good. So if I told you the concept of, hey, mostly clean is enough, right? Like my dad, when he goes to the bathroom and he comes out, I'll say, did you wash your hands? And he said, I rinsed them. He said, they're mostly clean, all right? Well, then we're not going to be sharing a sandwich of any sort, right? We're not going to be touching that because mostly clean is not clean. Does that make sense? We get that? That's the whole concept today. Mostly clean doesn't equal clean. That's what James is going to be teaching us. As we jump into James chapter 2, verse 10 is where we're going to start today, and he's making the point that even though you're mostly good, even though you're mostly righteous, even though you're mostly holy, even though you think of yourself as mostly clean, in the eyes of God, being mostly clean does not equal clean, because we're not going to drink out of any of those vessels. So James chapter 2, starting in verse 10, it'll be on the screen for you as we go. It says this, for whoever keeps the whole law but fails in one point has become accountable for all of it. For he who said, being God, do not commit adultery, also said, do not murder. So if you do not commit adultery, but you do murder, then you have become a transgressor of the law. So speak and so act as those who are judged under the law of liberty. For judgment is without mercy to the one who has shown no mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgments. The title of today's passage, if you look in your bulletin, says the gospel. We are simply preaching today the gospel of Jesus Christ. And you may say, now, Jordan, how in the world are you going to do that? Because none of those 4 verses said Jesus, said the cross, said the tomb, said the grave, said the heaven, said hell, said judgment, said eternity. But it's all in this set of verses. So stick with me today, and we're going to see how the gospel message comes out in these 4 verses. So the gospel message starts with an expectation. It starts with God, and the expectation is perfection. We have met a God in the gospel who is perfect. And he gives us the law, which is the guidebook, which is the rule book, which is the way to live. And the law for James in that day would have been the first 5 books of the Bible called the Torah. It would have gone through Deuteronomy, and it would have been the law, and that's what they were to follow. And it told them what to eat, what not to eat. It told them when to work, when not to work. It told them when to worship, when not to worship. It told them how to make sacrifices for their failures. It told them every step of how to live and who God was. And the law is perfect. There is nothing unnecessary and there is nothing arbitrary in the law. Now, some of the laws we can say are seated in the customs of the day, maybe like tattoos and the markings of the flesh, because that would have shown yourself to be in another nation and to follow other gods. But nothing in that day was unnecessary or arbitrary included in the law. Furthermore, nothing in the law was, the law is indivisible. You cannot cut it into pieces and say, I'm going to follow this part, and I'm going to follow that part, but I'm not going to follow this part. No, all of it matters. It's one whole. Think of it this way. One night every 28 days, you can look up and you can see a full moon, and you go, there is the moon. But then the other days, the moon is either getting bigger, it's either getting smaller. And when we see the fingernail of the moon in the sky, or when we see half of the moon, or when we see a waxing gibbonus or crescent, or whatever those words are that we learned in 4th grade, whenever we see those, we don't say, hey, look, there's part of the moon. There's a piece of the moon. No, we say that's the moon. It's one whole, even if we only see it in part. It's like if we broke a glass. If I got home today and my son was throwing a football in the front yard and he broke my windshield and he said, Dad, I broke part of your windshield on your truck and it's got a big crack about 6 inches long, but thankfully it's 60 inches long and it's not that wide. I think it's okay. I wouldn't be able to go to the Safelite Replace and go, hey, will you just give me 6 inches? I don't just give them the measurements of my crack. They have to say, we have to replace the whole window. It's indivisible. We cannot pick and choose the parts of the law that we are okay breaking and the okay following. The law is perfect. The law is indivisible. And the law is the standard for God. One sin, one disobedience, one failure to adhere to what the law commands results in a breaking of the law. That's what verse 10 says. If you fail at one point, then you have failed and you are accountable to the whole law. That brings us to the next point. We start with an expectation that God says that you must be perfect. But then we move to understand that we are a failure. As we present the gospel, we share the expectation of holiness as perfection, but then there is failure that is clear. Okay, so let's think of it this way. If you fail at one point, you fail at all. My parents are on a plane right now. They got to hang out with us this weekend, but they're flying back. And I hope and pray that the pilot flying their plane doesn't land safely 9 out of 10 times. Right? We don't want a pilot that lands 9 out of 10 times safely. We don't want a pilot that lands 99 out of 100 or even 999 times out of 1,000. We want and expect a pilot who lands safely every single time. Because failure in one time is a failed pilot. When we look to God, we do what verse 11 says. Well, God, I don't commit adultery even though I murdered. Well, that is still a failure of upholding the law, is what he is saying. And I hope everybody in here can say that I do not commit adultery and I do not murder. Please, I hope that's where we all sit today. But would we also be able to stand up to Jesus' litmus test of what murder and what adultery is? Where he says if you are having lust in your heart after something that is not appropriate for you, that is sin. If you have anger in your heart, if you call your brother a fool, then that is sin. Can we really meet that standard? And quickly, what we understand is that we are all failures. See, the demand of God is perfection, and all of us come in somewhere below that. We are all failures of maintaining the law. And an old saying back around James's day says this: to transgress the law in either great or small matters is of equal seriousness. It doesn't matter if you break a big rule or a little rule. You've broken a rule. And if you've broken a rule, you've no longer met the perfect standard of God. And so here is the challenge that the church has, and here is the challenge that Christians have. We no longer attain for the perfect standard of God. We attain to be better than all you folks. We attain to be better than all those people that are still sleeping, even though they got an extra hour of sleep last night. We sit in judgment of the people that are having brunch right now instead of worshiping the God of all creation. And we say that since I am better than most people, then God's got to let somebody into heaven, and why not me? I'm mostly clean, God. I'm mostly holy, God. I'm mostly righteous, God. I'm trying more than most are, God. Don't you want me? At least let me in. We want to live mostly clean because we don't think we can be perfectly clean, and we can't be perfectly clean. And so then we start comparing ourselves. But what we have to come to understand is we need to get to the place of being able to say these two statements very clearly. I think they're on the screen. I disobeyed God. Okay, that's the first statement. I disobeyed God. It may not be back there, Julia. Who knows? I think they can remember these. And here's the second point. I did not have to. I disobeyed God, and I did not have to. I've shared this before, but in our family, we like to blame situations and people and products. We like to blame the remote control for not doing what we told it to, remember? We like to blame that the microwave, or the refrigerator door didn't shut itself. And I told it to shut, but it didn't shut. We like to blame. But what we have to come to understand is the gospel is bringing us to a place of freely admitting, I disobeyed God and I did not have to. Yes, I have a sin nature. Yes, there is original sin. Yes, there is all of these family of origin factors and all of these things. But at the end of the day, I know that I have gossiped. I know that I have slandered. I know that I have lusted. I know that I've been angry. I know that I've said mean things when I should not have and when I could not have. I disobeyed God and I did not have to. And that brings us to the place of understanding, which the gospel wants us to see, that there is a separation between God who is holy and me who is unholy. Between God who is perfect and me who is imperfect. And the gulf in between us separates us in a way that I can never attain, I never can get, I never can earn His love and His favor based on the works that I do. Which brings us to 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 10, where it says this. This is the third part of the gospel message. Verse 10 says, "For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each one may receive what is due for what he has done in the body, whether good or evil." Listen, there is expectation, and we realize that we are failures. That creates, this gap creates a space for judgment that renders us unable to be with God based on our works. That is the situation. Now, if you remember back in your school days, there were judgments based on how good you were at school. They were called the report cards. They came out every 6 or 9 weeks, right? Some of you love the report cards because that means you're getting your little Pizza Hut personal pan pizza to go brag about, right? Some of you maybe got $1 for making a grade or $5 for making a grade. Some of you just didn't receive punishment because you made that grade, right? In your home, maybe C's were acceptable. Maybe y'all lived by the mantra, C's get degrees. And everybody was okay with that. As long as you were passing, that's fine. We're just trying to get through this. Some of you, it was an A and B household. As long as you could maintain a B average and everything, you were good. That was kind of the expectation. But then there were other places where that grade, even if you made a B, it meant something different, right? An 85 in physics is a very different grade than an 85 in art, especially when you have that art teacher that really doesn't do anything with you. You know what I mean? Like, an 85 in your hardest class versus an 85 in your easiest class reveals either hard work and laziness at times. And so we viewed grades differently. Now, I always pick on physics because I was a math major, and math was somewhat easy, but physics is impossible for everyone, I think. I worked with students at A&M, and physics was awful. I had friends that took a lot of physics courses at Alabama, and physics was awful. I took physics in high school, and physics was awful. Physics was just, the only class I've ever heard physics was easy is Carlin took physics for teachers, or maybe even elementary school teachers. She loved it. She also lived next door to the professor, and so I think that he felt bad at times and helped her out. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. But what if you made a 99 in physics? I mean, you crushed it. I mean, you should be able to get whatever you want, right? At that point, you have worked hard. You have given your best, and you have proven mastery over that. Well, what the Bible would say, if you made a 99, is that you failed. That a 99 is not good enough. My perfectionist friends in this room are really frustrated with that. You're soured by that. You want it to be possible, and you want to be the exception. You want to be the one that can prove it right, that can do it all. Now remember who James is writing to. James is writing this message of you're a failure, a sinner, a transgressor, to the people who have committed their life through the midst of suffering and pain to following Jesus, to the people that are adhering to the law and it's causing problems for them every single day. And what does he say? Not good job, you're mostly clean, I'm so proud of you. He says you are a transgressor, a failure. You and I have failed to uphold the law in the way that God has told us to do it. No matter how good or sweet or kind or generous or encouraging or faithful or friendly you are, you have failed because you're not 100%. You may be saying, Jordan, I thought you said this was going to be like a message of good news in the gospel. It absolutely is, and here's why. The gospel's not good news until you understand how bad you are. The gospel is not good news until you can realize that you are a sinner in need of a Savior. As long as you think you can save yourself, you have no reason for a Savior. The longer that you hold to how good you are, and how holy you are, and how righteous you are, and how devout you are, the longer that you believe in how much you can do, the longer you're going to miss out on what God has done for you. Most of us fall into a Pharisaical faith, believing that we can accomplish it if we just try hard enough. But the message of the gospel, found it. The message of the gospel is that we cannot do it. And that's where hope steps in. Verses 12 and 13, quickly as we move to the end. So speak and so act as those who are to be judged under the law of liberty. For judgment is without mercy to the one who has shown no mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment. James brings up the law of liberty. Thus far, he's talked about the royal law in verse 9. He's talked about the implanted word in verse 5 of chapter 2. And he talked about the word of truth in verse 21, I think, of chapter 1. He's been teaching us salvation in a bunch of different names and a bunch of different understandings so that we can grasp the height and the depth and the width of just how great this message is. And he says the law of liberty, and it's threefold. The law of liberty is salvation for us, that we receive liberty, that we are set free from the sentence that we owe, that we have been given God's grace and mercy to save us. The theological term is this: imputed righteousness is what he is bringing up. What is imputed righteousness? That we receive everything that Jesus has earned and deserved, and it is freely given to us. That it is imputed on us, instead of us offering what we have done. So the law of liberty has within it a concept of what saves us. It's also a concept of what sets us free. The law of liberty sets us free. No longer do we live under the tyranny of sin, under the master of just fulfilling our own desires. This is the old self being putting off and the new self being put on. This is what the law of liberty is. And finally, the law of liberty is sanctification of us. It's what sanctifies us. That's another big term. But sanctification is becoming more and more Christ-like. The way I like to say it, or I wrote it this week, is this: that because of God the Spirit within you, He is making you more like God the Son. God the Spirit making you more like God the Son every single day. This is the work of the Holy Spirit, changing us, renewing us, transforming us into the likeness of Christ. And will we be perfect? No. But this is the life that we live as believers. So the gospel is the story of expectations that are failed. Judgment is required, but Jesus steps into our place to be judged for us. And He gives us His righteousness so that when we stand before God, we don't bring what we have done, we point to what He has done. And that alone is enough. See, the gospel, the standard doesn't change. Jesus says, I did not come to abolish the law. I came to fulfill the law. I came to fulfill it. The standard does not change. It's the one who fulfills it that does. Listen to Ephesians chapter 2, verses 4 and 5. It says, we were dead in our trespasses and sin, having no hope, without God, all of these sort of things. And then it says that we were deep in our sin nature until verse 4, where it says this: but God, being rich in love, being rich in mercy, because of the great love which He has for us, even when we were dead in our trespasses, He made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved. So I say this very clearly. I've said this before, and I say it again because we need to hear it over and over again. Friends, you are not enough. You are never going to be enough. You're never going to be holy enough. You're never going to be righteous enough. You're never going to be devout enough for God. You're never going to follow enough of the rules. You're never going to do enough good things to earn His love. And you're not the exception. You're not the chosen one. You're not the only one that can do this. No, all of us have failed. But as you struggle with the guilt and the shame and the disappointment every time that you fail and every time that you stumble and every time that you struggle because you think that you should be perfect now because you've given your life to God and you're not perfect and you don't know what to do with that, here's what you need to hear very clearly. Jesus knows you and He loves you. He knows your weakness. He knows your failures. He knows your faults. He knows your temptations and He knows your shame. He knows the thoughts that you've never said out loud, and He knows the habits that you hope nobody ever finds out. Jesus knows the pride that you have deep in, your need for approval. He knows your loneliness and guilt. He knows every secret, every sin, and every struggle, and He still loves you. He's never stopped. He doesn't wait for you to be good enough. He came to you when you were not enough. And He lived among us and He died for us because He knew that we never could be enough. So He took our sin, He took our shame, and He paid our sentence so that we can be forgiven, so that we can say, it's not my good enough, God, it's all what Jesus has done that is enough. Because His blood covers every sin and His righteousness meets every standard of God. So I end this morning where James ends. Mercy triumphs over judgment. Verse 13 is good, that we are supposed to share mercy if we've received mercy. Don't miss the whole verse there, but it ends with mercy triumphs over judgment. So here's the question I end with this morning. What do you want to be judged by? Justice or mercy? What do you want to be judged by? justice or mercy. Now, a lot of us will say, well, for sure, mercy. Okay, pause. If you were standing before the throne of God and He asked you, why do you deserve entrance into heaven? What's your answer? Does your answer start with, well, I always believed in you. I trusted you. I gave my money to you. I gave up my Sundays to attend church for you. I know the songs about you. I taught Sunday school to kids about you. I lived my life away from these big sins. I never did this. I never did that. If we go to God in that moment and He says, why do you deserve to be in my heaven? And we offer anything but Jesus died for me, we're asking God to judge us on justice rather than mercy. And the temptation for most of us, especially those of us who've gotten comfortable in churches, is to point to what we have done to try to earn God's love instead of what He has done for us. I say this a lot, and I'm going to say it again. We all come to the point of understanding we didn't save ourselves, but now we believe that we have to keep ourselves saved. We have to maintain our salvation. And so when we don't, when we struggle, when we sin, when we fail, we now feel so much guilt, so much shame that we can't even pray to God because He doesn't love us anymore because of what we've done. But you cannot disqualify yourself from what you never qualified yourself for. You do not have to keep what you never earned. That's not license to sin, no. But it's understanding that shame is trying to prey on us to believe that we're judged by justice, not mercy. What started with grace is not completed by your works. I'm going to leave you with a line. It's not a holistic picture of grace. It's not the complete definition of grace, but it's a picture of grace that I need you to get. And it says this. I think I have a slide for it. Grace is God letting you win. Is that kind of souring to you a little bit? I don't like to be let to win. I'm not 8. I don't want to be given the victory. We bought a new game a couple weeks ago, and I cannot figure out how to beat Carlin in the game. It's so frustrating. It's like a Connect 4 game, but it rotates in different ways every time, and I cannot figure it out. And after the 6th time of her beating me 5 straight times when we got the game, the 6th time I started getting the lead in the game, and I looked at her and I said, "Are you letting me win?" And this little smirk came up on her face. And I said, "Clear the board. We're doing this for real. And we will play until I win. For real." Grace is God letting us win. And friends, for us to come to an understanding of what the gospel is, the taste of that statement no longer needs to be sour, but needs to be sweet. We need to go, yes, because we understand that there's no chance I ever have beating this game. I'm never going to win on my own. The only chance I have is God letting me win, and thanks be to God that He does. Let me pray for us.